Vulpes vulpes, otherwise known as the red fox, is a member of the canine family, but while a native animal throughout the northern hemisphere, the fox is no friend to man, farm animals or native wildlife in Australia. Since the fox was introduced to mainland Australia by European settlers in the 1850s, it has adapted so well to our environment that numbers have now reached dangerous proportions.
The estimates are between 1 and 4 million foxes within the state. We estimate between 4 and 10 foxes per square kilometre in this Casterton area.
In the northern tablelands of the state, we've got measurements of about 4 to 6 per square kilometre, and in the western parts of the state, the arid and semi-arid areas, they range in density from about 1 to 2 per square kilometre.
That when foxes were first introduced to Australia in the 1850s, they spread from one population in central Victoria across the whole of the continent at a rate of about 150 kilometres a year.
Conservative estimates of Australia's fox population suggest that around 10 to 30 million foxes may exist in the temperate areas of mainland Australia. A density of just 4 foxes per square kilometre, typical over most farmland areas, will mean that there may be 50 foxes within just 2,000 metres of a farm, and more than 1,000 foxes within a 10-kilometre radius. This creature is the consummate predator. The fox is equipped with extraordinary sensory facilities of night vision, keen hearing, and an outstanding sense of smell. He hunts all types of prey. The fox is agile, fast, and has the ability to climb. Standard fences are no barrier to the fox. Once his prey is found, the fox uses his sharp canine teeth to capture and kill, ripping and tearing apart the flesh of his victim. Because of their huge numbers, indiscriminate killing behaviour, and voracious consumption of food, foxes cause such catastrophic damage to wildlife and farm stock that it is incalculable in economic terms.
The fox is doing a tremendous amount of damage to rural Australia. For example, when you're lambing, the fox is there. The moment you start lambing, he's waiting for the ewe to drop the lamb. He's travelling in from neighbours' properties. We just seem to see so many foxes.
Well, foxes are very widespread throughout New South Wales, and they impact significantly on the sheep industry in many localities. The predation rates vary generally around 10 to 15%, 7% sometimes, but in rare cases up to 30%, so they can impact significantly on sheep production.
The Animal and Plant Control Commission in South Australia certainly does consider that foxes are having an impact on farm production and native fauna. Unfortunately, these things are fairly difficult to quantify, and if anything, they're probably being underestimated.
A recent survey of over 500 farms confirms that fox damage to agriculture far exceeds previous estimates. Damage to sheep, goats and poultry is commonly reported by farmers, and foxes have been known to maul the udders and vulva areas of cows and even rip the tongues from calves as they are born. Foxes also pose a threat to deer, emu and ostrich growers.
The injuries to the cow are usually sustained around the vulva and the vagina, so in actual fact the fox starts to eat the outside vaginal lips and continues in, and we may have a gaping hole in which you could put 1, maybe 2 hands inside this hole. Occasionally the umbilical cord, the belly button, is attacked, and the fox will then continue on in and keep on eating and eating and eating until he's into the intestines, and again that animal has to be put down or it dies.
Because the fox occasionally eats some fruits and berries, he can spread noxious weeds throughout farmlands and national parks.
In the Adelaide Hills here, above the city of Adelaide, we've got a significant problem with woody weeds such as olives and blackberries and boneseed. We've noticed over the years that foxes are using at certain times of the year the fruit off of these plants as part of their diet. And while there hasn't been any detailed study, if you go into the Adelaide Hills at any time when these things are fruiting, you notice the fox scats are obviously full of these the seeds of these fruiting weeds. So foxes are definitely having an impact, one would think, on spreading these woody weeds.
no rural landholder on mainland Australia can ignore the cost of fox predation. Research indicates that the fox diet depends largely on opportunity. For instance, the fox found in our forest areas will undoubtedly be existing mostly on wildlife, while the fox on farmland will almost certainly be feeding on sheep and lambs. Overall, around 30% of the fox diet consists of lambs and sheep, 30% native mammals, birds and reptiles, with the balance made up from rabbits, mice, insects and plants. Percentages of fox predation during lambing time can often be much higher. Even a 10% increase in lamb markings can increase profits on a typical farm by several $1,000s. It is easy to see that the benefits of fox control using fox-off programs make good economical sense. The actual amount of food consumption by foxes is staggering. There is no doubt that this unwelcome predator is costing Australia a lot to feed. A group of just 20 foxes on the average farm will eat 7.5 kilograms every night. That's more than 2.5 tonnes of food per year. Projected nationally, some 2.5 million tonnes would be consumed by the total fox population of Australia every year. As 30% of their diet may consist of our defenceless native fauna, this massive and widespread predation of our wildlife has resulted in almost total annihilation of Australia's small native mammals and ground-nesting birds over vast areas and in most habitats except for the tropical north.
Yeah, I think people don't understand, but if you come back in Australia 200 years ago, we had a mass of little animals living in Australia. They weren't big kangaroos and things, they were little animals. Most of our animals were under the 5 kilogram weight, and they were dense right across Australia. There were hare wallabies, nail-tail wallabies, bilbies, booties, numbats, all these animals, and in fact I believe we had a greater mass of grazing animals in Australia 200 years ago than we do today, but they weren't horses and cattle and sheep, they were these little animals, little kangaroos and things. And then the fox came and everything changed, and when you think that we had animals go from hundreds of millions like the woylies down to less than 200, we had the booty, the last booty was seen on the mainland, one of the commonest animals in Australia 200 years ago, disappeared about 1930, the last of them. And all these little animals, everything under 5 kilograms weight, was in serious trouble.
Sadly, during the past 200 years, Australia has the worst record of any continent for the extinction of its native wildlife. More than half of all species worldwide that are extinct are native animals of Australia.
The eastern barred bandicoot is one of Australia's most threatened marsupials. In Victoria, its natural range has been reduced by about 99%. I think eastern barred bandicoots are probably one of the prettiest of the small marsupials that we have in Victoria anyway. Their colour, their patterning and their general activity, although you can only see this basically at night, makes them most attractive. One of the problems that we've confronted with all the time with bandicoots is that it is preyed upon by introduced predators, particularly the red fox. And so to ensure that our recovery program, our reintroduction program can be successful, we need to control foxes. If we can't control foxes and other predators within our recovery program, then I think we have little chance of success. It's the major factor in the decline of the species in many parts of its range, and it's certainly the major factor that prevents successful re-establishment.
A startling example of the pervasive predatory pressure imposed by the fox is revealed at Rockhampton in Queensland. Large marine turtles regularly lay their eggs in the sand dunes at Monrepos Beach. Foxes have now reached this area and have learned to dig up and eat the turtle eggs, and are also known to eat the defenceless hatchlings as they scamper for the safety of the sea. This provides an example of how this land-based predator can even threaten the survival of water-dwelling reptiles by striking at a vulnerable stage of the life cycle. Other research has shown that up to 97% of Murray River tortoise eggs are raided by foxes.
The whole world has lost 40 species of mammal in the last 200 years. We've lost 20. Half of the mammals lost in the whole world in the last 200 years were here in Australia, and the reason for that is foxes. There's no doubt about that whatsoever. The foxes are the problem.
Over the years, farmers have tried various methods to control fox predation. Shooting and indiscriminate use of ad hoc homemade baits, often using poisons that were both dangerous and illegal, have never solved the fox problem.
Shooting of foxes has limited ability to reduce fox population or fox impact. So it really is only a backup system to other more effective methods like 1080 poisoning.
There are many traditional methods that are still employed out here in the Casterton area, such as shooting and fumigation and hunting.
Dr. Linton Staples has a 30-year history of innovative research in agriculture. After studying huge lamb loss problems in Australia, he became the architect of systematic and target-specific animal pest control. His concerns about the growing problems of fox predation led him to establish a research program in 1989 to find a viable solution to the problem of fox control. With the support of several land protection agencies, he developed the Fox Off project, which promotes the use of factory-prepared baits as part of a best practice method for effective and sustainable fox control. A feature of the Fox Off program is the reinvestment of revenue from Fox Off sales into ongoing research and improved communication about the fox problem and the best way to overcome it. This video, the Animal Control Technology seminar presentations and support material are just part of this investment. The Fox Off project is supported and endorsed by farmers, land care experts, Wool International and many government conservation agencies.
I like Fox Off because it's small, compact, convenient. It's got a longer shelf life than the other baits we used to use prior to Fox Off coming onto the market. And I just like its convenience and safety.
If farmers carry out a fox baiting program on their property, it's a good investment for them to use Fox Off.
We use Fox Off because it's convenient to use. It's a good carrier for the poison, which is 1080. We find that foxes are attracted to the bait. When we've used a poisoning program, we can see the results of reduction in foxes. We can see a consequent increase in bandicoot survival.
The beauty about the Fox Off bait is that, as I said, it works for 24 hours a day, but it is a quality product and we have a longevity within the field.
The reasons for this support are simple. Fox Off is a thoroughly researched and shelf-stable prepared bait with a precise dose of poison. The baits are highly effective for the control of foxes while posing limited risk to non-target native mammals, birds and reptiles. Fox Off is quickly absorbed from the fox gut to reduce the risk of foxes regurgitating an intact bait. Fox Off biodegrades due to the action of bacteria and moulds in moist soils. The baits are simple to use and conveniently packaged in accordance with all regulations and are supported by comprehensive technical information. Farmers have embraced the Fox Off project with enthusiasm because it is effective, easy to use and yields them good financial returns. The best results have been achieved by group efforts conducting a thorough Fox Off program.
Our percentages, before I started using Fox Off, I had one particular bush block where I was battling to mark 80, 85%. Since I've been using the baits, last year a couple of the mobs marked 140%, so that's a massive increase in lambings, but I wouldn't expect that to be average across the board, but certainly in that block it is. I usually expect around 10-15% increase if I use the baits compared to my neighbours who say don't use the baits. It's been proven that foxes travel a large area, and if you're just doing it on your own and your neighbours aren't participating, well, as soon as you clean your foxes up, your neighbours' foxes will come in and take over that run. So yeah, if you can get all your neighbours involved in a program, it's much more successful.
Since we've had group baiting programs running here over a sustained period of time, we're certainly getting plenty of anecdotal reports back from farmers that they've seen a shift in their lambing percentage. They're certainly turning off more lambs.
During the 5 years I've been using Fox-Off, our lambing percentages have gone from 65% to 88%, and I attribute that to a fox baiting program. I think group baiting with Fox-Off or 1080 would be a wonderful thing. In this area, I'm doing basically a solo program, but like many other rural programs, as in foot rot groups, fire groups, I think fox baiting should be a must.
One of our local farmers had only a 10% marking, and he was, wondering why. And the following year, we carried out a fox baiting program on his property and increased his percentage from 10% to 95% just in that 1 year. A group effort is definitely the best way to go, because the farmer himself only has to do a minimal amount of baiting simply because his neighbours are doing it. But even if his neighbours aren't doing a baiting program, a lone baiting program is still better than none.
My suggestion would be that if landholders are serious about fox control, they should gather in groups. And this is what the department's been working on for the last 4 years, is gathering groups and increasing the participation rate. Because ultimately it's the participation rate that gauges the success of the program. And we need more people involved, and we need to be more conscientious about where we're baiting to ensure that we bait all of the district, not just the paddocks that we intend to lamb in.
Conservation agencies, land care groups, farmers and city folk are unanimous in their concern about the crisis that fox predation poses to our farm stock and our precious wildlife. There is, however, another major source for concern. Every year, worldwide, more than 15,000 people and countless animals die from rabies infection. Here in Australia, we are always facing the risk of a rabies outbreak, which could arise from the illegal importation of dogs and other animals.
If rabies was introduced into Australia, it would be an absolute catastrophe. It would be a catastrophe for all our production animals and therefore would impinge on our overseas trade. But more specifically, of course, it would be an absolute catastrophe for our companion animals and humans. Foxes being a vector of disease. And specifically, you've got sarcoptic mange, which is zoonotic. In other words, it's transmissible from the fox to other animals, including humans. Then, of course, you've got heartworm. They are a great reservoir in the suburbs for heartworm infection that specifically attacks our companion dogs.
And there are other serious threats to human health that can be spread by the fox. Of these, hydatid tapeworm is an especially serious and emerging problem. The good news is that recent research studies have demonstrated that with an effective fox control program like Fox-Off, health risks can be minimised and our wildlife can once again thrive in their natural habitats.
Well, I think fox control is nobody's problem but everybody's problem. If we're going to address the problem, we have to do it collectively. The community has to be involved, and the agriculture pastoralists, the agricultural people have to be involved as well. And the only way we could possibly control foxes is to do broad spread control across huge areas, and that's not only good for conservation but it's good for the pastoralists and grazier as well, because if you control foxes, reduce the number of foxes, then lambing rates increase as well.
Well, we certainly know that good group baiting control efforts involving both private landholders and national park over a big enough area is certainly having a significant impact on fox numbers. We've certainly been able to demonstrate that. Certainly from what's happening in Western Australia would indicate that, as fox numbers go down, we can expect to see a recovery in native fauna.
We have heard from farmers who have embraced the Fox-Off project and are now reaping the rewards with greatly increased lamb markings, resulting from their genuine commitment to fox control. the Fox Off program has become the focal point for education, training and awareness of foxes throughout the eastern states of Australia. As a result, there is increased awareness and understanding of the fox problem. And because of the widespread support for the Fox Off project, we know that we can achieve an effective reduction of the damage caused by foxes to farmland and wildlife reserves. We hope that you will assist your local government pest control agency to maintain pressure on foxes over a wide area, and that you will realise the benefits for agricultural production and for the Australian environment.
Thank you for giving your attention to our video on foxes and fox control in Australia. I hope this video presentation has increased your awareness of the serious threat posed by foxes to all Australians, and especially to those who live in our rural communities. An important first step in solving the fox problem has been to understand the true scale and geographical distribution of the fox population, and also to be aware of the serious damage caused to our stock and to our precious native wildlife. Further information on how to control foxes in your area can be obtained from your local government agency in each state. However, we would like to take this opportunity to give a brief overview of the correct procedures for using Fox Off in the Fox Off baiting control program. To ensure that you get maximum benefit from your fox control program, we recommend that you place Fox Off baits in shallow holes and cover with some dirt. This reduces the risks of birds finding baits and greatly reduces the risk to non-target animals such as native herbivores and to stock, which do not dig for food. As a general rule of thumb, one bait station should be established for every 5 to 10 hectares in the control area. Placements of baits along internal fence lines or along trails allows easy checking. Foxes can find baits placed almost anywhere, but a common site for placement is where an animal pad or track meets the trail. Always ensure that the bait is placed above the low points where water would flow in heavy rain. Baits do not need to be checked daily, but best practice is to check the bait lines once or twice per week for a program lasting 2 to 3 weeks. It is important to replace baits at sites where they have been taken. This is because it is possible for several foxes to visit the same bait station. It is normal to find several baits taken from one site, and in some cases these sites become heavily tainted with fox urine. It is normal behaviour for foxes to cache and bury prey such as lambs or wildlife. This can also happen with any type of bait, but this has not caused problems in field fox control programs. In this rare on-farm night footage, a fox is seen to take a bait, then move a short distance before reburying the bait with about the same care as would be taken by a farmer or a conservation agent. Research has shown that several foxes can be active around a single bait station. Watch carefully as a second fox approaches the buried bait, but is unchallenged by the first fox. This shows that foxes may be sharing food rather than hiding it just for themselves. The second fox is then challenged by a third fox, which submits to the dominance of the second and leaves the second fox free to recover and eat the buried bait completely. Placement of a single bait at this site would only have removed one of the 3 foxes present, and this is why bait replacement over several nights is an important feature of any truly effective fox control program. Foxes are very good at finding the baits even when a lure trail is not used. The use of a lure trail, such as a carcass dragged between bait stations, may only increase the risk of one fox travelling along the trail to find several baits. Delayed action of the poison also means that most foxes find their way back to cover before dying. Research using radio tracking has revealed that most carcasses are found well hidden under scrub or within lairs such as hollow logs. Many farmers report finding few carcasses until months after the program, or only after their neighbours report finding unusually high numbers of dead foxes in sheltered areas. Fox control can be conducted at any time, since foxes will take baits even when other food is plentiful. However, there are two optimum times for fox control programs. One is during autumn, when young foxes are dispersing to new territories and when the annual fox density is at its highest. The second optimum time is in late winter, when foxes are breeding. Remember that for every vixen or breeding pair destroyed during the winter, there will be about 5 fewer cubs to deal with during the following season. We are often asked about the safety of poison baits for fox control and the potential risks to native animals, livestock and working dogs. We've reduced these risks in several ways. Firstly, the poison used is a precise but low dose of the poison found in some native plants in Australia. Over millions of years, our native animals have become less susceptible to this plant toxin. Recently arrived pests such as the fox have not had time to adapt, so very low doses can be used to kill foxes with minimal risk to native herbivores. In any case, as a general rule, birds and reptiles are less susceptible to the poison than mammals. The poison is a simple substance, very similar to acetic acid. The toxin in fox off is degraded in wet soil by common bacteria and moulds. Thus there are no toxic time bombs left around. Despite this feature, it is recommended that baits are recovered and burned at the end of a program. Fox off baits are also designed to rapidly digest once eaten. This reduces the risk of regurgitation. Regurgitation can be a problem with some homemade baits, such as chicken heads. This film shows a fox eating a salami bait which has been laced with a supposed fox attractant. Note that the bait is regurgitated within moments of being eaten. Finally, if a risk to native animals is perceived, it is possible to place non-poisoned baits known as free feeds before placing poison baits in the area. Fine sand is placed over the bait to allow easy identification of the animal visiting the bait station, and this can be checked before poison baits are used. Despite all these features, it is important that directions are followed closely and that a cautious approach is taken to the use of any poison bait. Dogs can also be attracted to the baits and are just as vulnerable to foxes to the toxin used. It is therefore important to restrain pets and working dogs while the baits are in use. And it is important also to advise neighbours that baiting programs are about to commence and to place warning signs at the boundary of properties.
I rely very heavily on my working dogs, and I enjoy their company. They're real friends to me, and but I don't find them a fox off a problem with them, because I just keep them restrained on the vehicle when I'm going around the paddocks, and if I have to use them in the paddock where the baits are laid, I just put muzzles on them. But it just comes down to being responsible with the baits that you're using and looking out for your dogs, and I've never had a problem since I've been using the baits.
Since the adoption of the Fox Off program, dog losses have reduced, in part due to better practices being followed and the abolition of homemade baits with excessive poison loads. Nevertheless, despite these safety features, the use of Fox Off is restricted in semi-rural areas unless small property owners consolidate to provide a large single area and conduct closely supervised programs. Since the release of Fox Off in 1993, farmers have achieved an unprecedented level of fox control. We urge all landholders to support the Fox Off project by seeking advice from their local government pest control agency and by adopting a sensible and cautious use of Fox Off for effective fox control.